We're live. Okay, we're live, and that means that we've started. And um, if anybody's actually tuning in, which we're new to this, it's the first time that we've actually been doing rethinking the city through Google Hangout. Welcome, and if you're watching this at a later date, that's great too. But my name is David Moran, and I'm one of the organizers for Rethinking the City. And this month we are going to be trying something new, which is virtual. We usually meet at the Juice Bike Share headquarters, which is in the Paramore neighborhood. But Rethinking the City's focus is on urban design, community engagement, social justice, and many other issues that kind of form urban identity and community engagement. And I mean, we've had all kinds of different issues from affordable housing to designing bike trails to using play as a way to engage people and learning in the urban environment, and a lot of other interesting topics. But so please check out our Facebook page if you haven't already been there. And I'm going to go ahead and allow the panelists tonight to start introducing themselves. And so whoever wants to go first,
Ladies
that's
first.
there.
I knew that
Yeah,
was
so
coming. I knew that was
yeah,
coming.
go ahead, Frederick. And Christopher should be there, but I'm not sure. So y'all go ahead and start. Introduce yourselves. Tell us what group you're representing. Because I didn't, I should preface real quick. The topic tonight. I made the title is LGBTQ plus Latinx plus the city, and it's timely in the sense that we're here in Orlando. We're still, I don't even know if you could say recovering, trying to just understand, deal with, support people that have been directly affected by this, as well as the broader community. The shooting that happened at Pulse, the hate crime that happened on June 12th, 49 people were killed. 50, I believe it's 52 people were injured. There were over 300 people at that club tonight. It was that night. It was Latin night at Pulse, a popular gay club. And so the Latinx community and the LGBTQ plus community have definitely been impacted by this. And there's also that intersection of identity for people that identify with both those groups that are LGBTQ plus and Latinx.
Did it freeze?
Are doing to help bring more visibility to the various issues people have faced recovering with all of this. So now I'll go ahead and let you guys introduce yourselves. Hopefully my connectivity is still working because I have a kind of spotty Wi-Fi. So you guys can't hear me?
Yes, we
Can
can
anybody?
now. We lost you for a minute, but we got you back.
Was I talking for like a minute without anybody? That's
No,
great.
it was just a couple seconds. No worries.
Okay. All right,
So
good.
I'll go ahead and start.
So what did you not? Yeah, please go ahead and start.
Thanks everyone for bearing with us today. David, thank you for inviting me. My name is Cristina Hernandez. I'm one of the co-founders of Proyecto Somos Orlando, which came organically in grassroots, or developed very grassroots in a very grassroots way in the aftermath of the Pulse shooting, bringing together Latino organizations to try to respond in culturally competent and relevant ways to the community. Unfortunately, over 96% of the victims were Latino. So there are a lot of cultural nuances within the Latino culture, and for us it was really, really important to make sure that we were filling a gap and a need that we saw, and then also elevating the Latino voice as a whole in the intersection between the Latino and LGBT communities in this situation, because really in the first 48 hours we really did not hear much about the Latino portion of the program and how it was Latin night. And we're talking about two marginalized communities that find themselves in an intersection that was really affected um, by the incident that occurred on June 12th. So that's how Proyecto Somos Orlando came together. And it was initially just very organically a group of women that found themselves at the Hampton Inn on the Sunday that followed, and decided that we had to do something to step up and help the community as we started to see the families and hear the names of those who had been murdered that day. So since then, lots of things have happened. We've opened a center for long-term mental health services and a couple of other things, which I'm sure we'll go into a little later, but wanted to kind of lay some foundation about who we are and how we came to be. And yeah, thank you for having me. Frederick, you're up.
Hi. Hi, everyone. And David, thank you for inviting me as well to my first Google Hangout panel. I'm really excited about this. So my name is Frederick Velez. I'm working right now with FIRE, which is the Florida Institute for Reform and Empowerment, and I'm the Latino organizer there. What we're doing right now is we're trying to make sure that the Latino community is educated about the issues that are currently happening and how they affect them. And we also try to empower them through leadership development and through civic action and organizing so that they can go out and we can get power and build power. I moved here about 3 months ago, and then the awful tragedy at Pulse happened. And I think that we saw a need for a lot of Latino services, for a lot of Spanish language services in the city, and we saw how kind of we need to improve how the city responded and the services that are provided for them. So we have kind of been starting some programs that I think in the long term will help the Latino community not only educate themselves about the issues that are happening, but also about how those issues affect them and the actions that they can take in order to empower the community and create real changes that will have a lasting impact and improve their quality of life.
All right, can you guys hear me? I'm back. Sorry, I was muted. I think Christopher might be having some slight technical difficulties. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, you're nodding. Okay. So, Christopher, are you able to any luck coming in, or are you able to maybe even chat? Let me see. Hang on. Well, why don't you guys, while we try to get Christopher back online, you guys want to just keep talking about what more about some of the efforts that have been going on lately, and what has been. I mean, what's kind of the current 411 on how people have been responding, at least in the organizations that you're working with.
Sure. So I think I'm the only one who's on right now. So I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing. So as I mentioned, Somos Orlando, which began as a coalition of different Latino organizations coming together, really just to share information in the first early days, has evolved into a larger project, Proyecto Somos Orlando, which means Project Somos Orlando, which is We Are Orlando, to open 2 mental health centers, or just long-term service centers, really, for the long-term mental health effects of what happened on June 12th. And we've partnered with a variety of partners, beginning with Hispanic Federation, who began the Somos Orlando Fund for us to begin raising money to provide these long-term services. We know from 9/11 that this is a very long process, and there's recently been some legislation to continue to provide those benefits to survivors from 9/11. So making sure that there are, these community support systems in place that can provide for the long term, because this is something that we're going to be dealing with for a really, really long time in our community. And wanting to make sure that those cultural nuances are met within the communities that have been affected. So beyond that, Hispanic Federation, as I mentioned, began the fund, and we also partnered with Hispanic Family Counseling Center, Florida Immigrant Coalition, who is helping with some legal services around U visas and things like that, and it's all in the same building. When there's one in Kissimmee, one in South Orlando, so it's in the heart of the Hispanic community as well. We've also opened up the space to other groups and organizations that want to come together and organize that have also been affected. Christopher's group is one of them. I don't know, I think I saw him pop on for a minute, but Christopher and another, a handful of amazing people have come together to really organize within the LGBTQ Latinx community, where there has been a void for so long. I mean, nothing like that exists here in Orlando, and unfortunately it took a tragedy to elevate that and to raise that into the conversation, but sometimes, you know, that's how it goes. And in Spanish we say, no hay mal que por bien no venga, which means that out of every bad situation, something good comes out of it. And I think, at least from my perspective, what I've started to see in terms of, you know, the good that has come out of this is really this organization and this unity of communities that for a long time have been marginalized, but want to come together and unite to really use their collective voice to drive change where change is needed. And, you know, it makes me really, like, honored and humbled to be a part of that in some small way. And Chris is saying that he can't hear anyone. We could see you for a minute. And with that, I'll hand it over to Frederick. I don't want to talk too much.
No, I'm trying to figure out what we could do to better get you online, Christopher. Sorry about that.
Yeah, we really
about
need to hear from
troubleshooting.
Christopher, because the work that they're doing
Yeah.
is like the most critical and is the you know, where the intersection lies.
Exactly. So what we could try to do is, Chris, you already tried to leave and come back into the conversation. It's still, and Frederick, is your video and audio working? Are you
Yes,
able
it's
to?
finally working. I don't know why it just like crashed
Okay.
out.
Christopher, is everything for you unmuted? Are you able to say in the? Oh, this is part of them. Well, while we're trying to figure that out, I had a question for you all. Maybe you can answer. When you talk about, you were talking about, like, you just mentioned saying something in Spanish, but what has been the like, how, I mean, even this conversation we're having in English, which means that people that don't speak English may not be able to access the information that we're talking about immediately. How you navigate having an audience that has, like, I don't know what the word would be, bilingual needs or different language needs, to make sure that they are getting the services, resources, information that they need, especially in a time of crisis like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a challenge when you're trying to, you know, reach communities that already have limited access to certain information, and then on top of that, you throw in a language barrier. So that was part of why we began Somos Orlando, because we saw an initial response that wasn't fully, you know, engaged with the Latino community, and that the message that needed to get to the families of these 49 victims wasn't getting to where it needed to be. So, you know, in a very quick and dirty way, we threw up a website. Frederick actually helped with that. Just basic information on where they could call, what the resources were, information directly connecting them with the Department of State in Puerto Rico, since 23 of the victims were from Puerto Rico as well. So we really just wanted to serve as an informational tool and conduit to connect those dots where they were needed in the aftermath. And because the folks that came together to do this project, and the 40 groups that joined in coalition with that solidarity statement that we made on the Monday that followed, you know, we're all really involved in the community, and we work really closely with community organizations and with families. And, you know, I come from a media background, so, you know, the way that it all kind of happened, we were able to really mix the ingredients of what we needed to get this information out there. And because of our relationships within the community, and with some media partners that I've worked with in the past and some of our other folks have worked with in the past, we were really able, you know, thanks to them, to help get the word out on radio, on TV, through the internet, and in whatever way we could. You know, we're a word of mouth people as well. So when we are talking to our friends and talking to our family, oh, did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? So we did have a really strong response within that first week, which I think is what led to the evolution of the project and the Hispanic Federation kicking us off with $10,000 in seed money to launch the centers, which then turned into, more and more attention to the project, which we're really grateful for, because at the end of the day, yes, the $20 million that are in the pot right now to go directly to victims and survivors need to go there. But we also need to provide a support system in the community, within a community that for so long has been traditionally underserved, under-resourced, underfunded, and we see that in our community. So making sure that there is that support system and structure within the community directly for survivors, but also for their families who, unfortunately, within the Latino community, LGBT issues and being gay and trans issues are still really, really difficult to navigate within our culture that is so heavily influenced by machismo. And for a lot of these families, this is how they found out that their kids were gay. So breaking through some of those barriers, increasing some of those conversations, that visibility, and supporting the LGBTQ Latino community and Latinx community to organize themselves. I mean, I have been really candid with the groups and with the folks that I've met with, and I'm very aware of where my privilege ends in this conversation. So I am just here to do all that I can as an ally to support the communities that need the support and get them the information and resources that they need in whatever way that we can.
I think Christina hit on some really great points there, especially when she said that saying where like there's no good that doesn't come, there's nothing bad happens. Oh my God, I'm gonna say it in Spanish. My mal que volví annoying. It basically means that we have to try to find a silver lining in things that happen that may be tragic, that may be bad. I think something that really was great was how the Proyecto Somos Orlando and also how Christopher, with the work that he's doing, came out of what happened of that tragedy. One of the things that were really apparent when the tragedy happened was that the city of Orlando and some other institutions didn't have the tools to manage Spanish services. And I think when we started setting up the website and we started trying to find services that were offered in Spanish, it kind of was apparent. But I think that people have woken up. They have seen that there's a need to provide those services. And slowly but surely we're getting there. Proyecto Somos Orlando has been working really hard in developing those services for the community. And then Christopher, with his great work over at QLatinx, has started to develop a safe space for the community to start talking about the issues that are happening, about how we can better integrate the Latino community with the LGBT community, which because of our culture, because of our religion, maybe we have some trouble historically with it. And I think that we have started to have those conversations, which is really important. It's really important that that we start talking about how we can better improve the relationship that we have between.
Wow, so I'm the only one that's on right now. Forgive us, we're having some technical difficulties. I'm not sure what's going on. But to piggyback a little bit on what Frederick was just talking about in terms of, and this is not just for the Latino community. I mean, this is something that transcends community in the sense that, we're in a city where there are so many different languages spoken, where there are so many cultures. We've kind of become this little mini, I won't say melting pot, but, mixing salad bowl or whatever the term is nowadays, of different cultures that really comprise Orlando. We're a very transient city. We're, just very diverse. And as a community starts to develop, and I think I honestly don't know as much about rethinking the city as I probably should, but in terms of thinking ahead of how we build our city and how we create disaster management plans, which personally I know absolutely nothing about, but I can say that this has raised something that we should really keep in mind when it comes to urban planning, when it comes to, these emergency and crisis response, of how we're dealing with a diverse community to where we're able to respond in a way that is culturally competent and relevant to the communities that comprise the cities in which we are. Municipalities, districts, states, whatever, should really, and this is probably done, but I think we at least saw firsthand of maybe it not being a priority in terms of planning, of evaluating the demographics of the city and knowing, if, God forbid, that something happened again or somewhere else, that there are steps in place and a plan in place to be able to support the communities that comprise the local demographics. So that's something that I personally noticed, and I'm sure that nowhere else in the world probably knows this better than New York City, one of the most, if not the most, diverse city in the country, in the world, and the country, for sure. In response to 9/11, having to service so many different communities and ethnicities and languages, and there's a difference between language access and cultural competency. I could learn Chinese tomorrow and I still would never fully understand what it means to be Chinese or to understand the Chinese culture in a way that a native would. So, working through those pieces, and I want to be really clear in the sense that nobody's ever prepared for this. Nobody, no city, no state, no entity is ever. Am I gone? Can you still hear me? Am I gone? Oh. Can you see me? So you can hear and see me.
Sorry.
All right. Okay. Sorry. I just need to finish this because I think it's really critical. Nowhere is ever ready for this type of catastrophe, because there's really no other word for it. I mean, this is a horrible, horrible thing that happened here, and our city responded, I know, in the best way it knew how. I know that folks really, in the aftermath, responded in the best way we know how. But, in retrospect and in the development of how things happened in the aftermath, I think it's fair to say that looking ahead and as learning and best practices for other places to take note, that we really, really should make those evaluations of who are the partners in the community that we can trust, that work within these communities, that can help support and provide capacity in these types of moments, and making sure that there's a real assessment of that, and the real community, the real pulse of the community, like no pun intended. I think that's critical in looking ahead of how people can not prevent, but be prepared in some capacity in a better way to service the local needs.
Thank you. So, again, I apologize. This is stuff doing this Google Hangout. I've never seen so many people go in and out of a conversation before. It's a bit unpredictable, but I appreciate you sharing. And are you able to? Do we lose? I'm thinking that we maybe lost. Do we lose Frederick, and Christopher is not able to the conversation? But as this continues to be kind of a technical difficulty, and I wasn't good prior to, but I'm just wondering, like, what do you think the next steps are to help learning opportunity in terms of just realizing when you have a vulnerable population or a population that already feels marginalized in the experience such direct harm like this and are having to recover, what do you think are the next steps moving forward? Like, I mean, it's still so fresh and new too, but
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of healing that's
it's hard to even talk about that.
I'm sorry, what was that last part?
I was saying it's hard to even talk about the idea of moving forward because everything's still so new that's happened too.
Yeah, I mean, everyone heals and processes in a different way. And, for me, the way that I deal with things is drowning myself in a project and like work, 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 work. Like that's what I do. But everybody's different. So I think, one, have to all, and by all I mean everyone in Orlando, because we were all touched by this in some way. We need to continue to have that initial love and patience and gentleness with one another that we had in the initial days. Continue to live that every day, because we need to be gentle with one another. We need to understand that people are still grieving. Like today, I drove by Orlando Health, I drove by the hospital for the first time since they took down all the flowers and everything, and seeing it bare without, the crosses and everything, it just, I don't know, to me it was almost like it was too soon to not respect what had happened. Or, I mean, I don't know. I can't really even explain it, but it hurt. It hurt, it hurts to see the memorials, but then it hurt to not see the memorials. So I think people, and I'm just speaking for myself, right, but I think that what I'm experiencing, people are experiencing in their own way, where there's still a lot of conflicting feelings and hurt and pain and triggers that sometimes we don't even anticipate, but they just come. And so we all need to be aware that we're all going through that, and support one another in whatever way we can. So I think that's one, just loving each other. And two is organizing. Once people feel that they're able to, coming together like Christopher and his group are doing, like Somos Orlando has done, like, Frederick has been very modest, and I know we lost him, and David, even you, who took to taking a stand, and a harsh stand, against politicians who are inactive and absent from taking action against what we need in this country, which is common sense gun reform. And the fact that this man even had access to the weapons that he did, the fact that he was even able to go in there with this type of weapon is unacceptable, and we cannot continue to see this in our country. So I know that you, David, and Frederick both are heroes in my eyes, and were arrested as part of a civil disobedience action that was calling out Marco Rubio and, really at large other politicians and folks who have been inactive on this cause. I mean, how many more people have to die in order for us to move forward with common sense legislation in this country? There is absolutely no reason as to why that should not happen, and it should have happened years ago. It should have happened after Newtown. It should have happened after Sandy Hook. It should have happened after Orlando, and here we are still waiting. So if we don't organize, we will never get what we need in this country, and I've come to learn that you don't get what you don't ask for. And sometimes that means asking in a harsh way, and more than that, it's demanding. It's not asking anymore. It is demanding what we deserve. And for too long, certain communities, the Latinx community, the LGBTQ community, the African American community, and, minorities, communities of color, have been marginalized and intentionally dismissed from certain conversations, from certain access, from certain resources, and we have come to a point in our history that enough is enough. Enough is enough. We see the tide turning. We see the passion rising among folks who have been suppressed and told to be quiet for too long. And, in this moment, I feel like this really, hit a button with so many people in so many different ways, because we saw such a specific and such a very, very, I keep using the word marginalized, but that's really what it is, intersection of communities that have no representation. They don't. They live, and I don't want to speak for them, right? But from my perspective and from what I see, they weave in and out of two worlds without really being able to find a home that is both and together. So I'm someone who wants to support that movement. I think elevating and supporting the QLatinx movement and organization that, again, also has organically come together and said, we're going to come together, we're going to organize, we're going to flex our power, and we're going to demand what we need for our community. And anybody who does that, regardless of where you come from, if you're on the side of justice and you're on the side of what is right, I personally will always be your ally. So for me, those are the next steps that I see in our community, and I hope to be a part of it and support in whatever way that I can.
Thank you. So Christopher's still having issues being able to get in. A quick fix to be able to include him in the conversation would be if he could call one of us and join us via speakerphone. I don't know. Do you think that that could possibly work, or do y'all have? Can you hear us, Frederick? Are you there?
I can hear you. I think I finally.
I think we should at least
okay,
try.
so you're there.
I think we should at least make the attempt, because I think it's really important that we hear from Christopher, because, you know, at the end of the day, he he's the one who represents the community that was affected, 96% here. So, I want to make sure that we're giving him a
Frederick,
voice.
can you take a call from Christopher so that he can maybe chime in with you? Is that okay?
He doesn't want to. He doesn't want to talk to me. Oh. I'm jealous.
I don't want to see my face. I'm going to take myself off the broadcast. But okay, it seems like maybe the connectivity is getting a little bit better. But in the meantime, while he's calling, well, let me check to see if he's calling. Frederick, did you have anything that you wanted to say, or you're getting ready to take the call? So maybe that way.
I can just talk until Christopher calls. I think the next steps are clear. I think the majority of the population in the United States wants sensible gun laws reform. I think that it's mind-blowing that elected officials that have the power to change things and that know that the majority of the Americans are with us in terms of taking military-grade weapons out of the streets, in terms of limiting who can access weapons, in terms of creating background checks for people that want to buy guns. I think it's kind of like mind-blowing that because of their ties with political donations, because of their ties with organizations like the NRA, they just don't want to do gun reform. So I think it's up to us. I think it's up to us to organize, to get together, to call our elected officials until we drive them crazy. If that's what we have to do, to make protests like the ones we did on Marco Rubio's office. I think we have to make it very clear to them, the ones that have the power to change the laws, that we are not going to stop until these gun laws are happening. I have Christopher right here. One moment.
Yay!
Hello? Hello? Yes, can you hear me? Okay, let me see if I can put you up on speaker and people can hear you talk. One moment. Okay, can you try now? Christopher, can you try talking now? Hello.
Is the speakerphone on?
Okay, I'm gonna put you in speaker now, so try right now.
Speakerphone?
Yeah, I don't know why it's not.
It's not coming through?
No, I don't know why. First time my speaker doesn't work.
You can try calling me. Let me get my phone. We have to get at least Christopher to say a few words.
Yes, we won't stop until we make sure that Christopher can talk.
We can't stop,
You
and we
decide
won't stop.
where do you put your energy? Like if you're busy grieving, how can you think about going to a protest?
That is true.
You know, or
I think,
trying to organize a fundraiser. You know, there's just
yeah, I think everyone has their own way with coping with the tragedy, right? And it affected people in different ways. Um, and you're right. How can you go to a protest when you're grieving? How can you organize a political fundraiser? Um, but I think in this day and age, with the technology that we have, with the way that we have to reach different people, I think there's a lot of things that we can do, you know? But I think that Christopher is Christopher in?
Yes, Christopher, can you say something?
Yeah, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
oh my gosh.
Yay, we can hear you.
Oh, wonderful. There's a little bit of a delay and a little echo, but I mean, I'm hoping Christina can help me out a little bit.
So, Christopher, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of set this up. So, we've been talking, obviously, about the work that's been done in the aftermath of the last couple of weeks. And we have been talking about how you and some other amazing young leaders have come together to really unite the LGBTQ Latinx community. So will you talk to us about what you guys are doing, what you're all about, the name, all that good stuff, and just give us a run through of what you've been doing and how you've been organizing?
Absolutely, and thank you so much for providing this venue and for inviting us to come and speak on behalf of our respective organizations. For myself, it's so rare that we get to see intersecting voices come forward and speak on behalf of the marginalized community. We've seen so often that in times of tragedy, stories aren't always adequately told by those who are centered in the tragedy or in the aftermath of tragedies. And so I think it's so important and so incredible that this space has been created for us to kind of tell our experiences as people who are a part of the intersection. QLatinx is a community organization that was founded in the aftermath of the Pulse Nightclub tragedy that stole 49 beautiful and innocent lives from our community. We were founded predominantly by individuals who were principally impacted by this tragedy, those individuals who lost loved ones, those individuals who were there that night, or those individuals who had very strong ties to this community. We brought together these local individuals in order to create a supportive infrastructure to ensure that our voices were heard and to address inequity in the community. We've seen historically a lack of support in infrastructure for marginalized LGBTQ plus communities of color. And so when we heard about the things that were being done, the amazing things that were being done to support the LGBT community and to support the Latino community, so many of us felt that because we fall in between both, our immediate needs and our experiences weren't adequately being told and we weren't adequately being serviced. And so what we've decided to do is convene together, and initially we create safe spaces for the members of this community who need a place to heal, who need to heal in community. And so that's where a large amount of our work has been spent, is in creating that healing space, in healing the individuals who are still affected in the aftermath, and promoting community in really empowering them. We've also been so fortunate to partner with an organization here, Somos Orlando. They've been gracious enough to offer us a space for us to coalesce in community. We're working on some community initiatives at the moment to ensure that our narratives are being told, to ensure that we can best support the Orlando community and the neighboring Central Florida communities at large. With as much with as much support as they need. And so that is referrals for mental health counseling, or connecting individuals with legal aid services. You know, we're committed to finding budget partners that are going to support us in that work. And again, uplifting the marginalized, intersecting voices. And so that's really where we've been in this moment in time. Is just uplifting the members of this community and giving them time and space to heal.
And Christopher, one of the questions that David asked both myself and Frederick is, you know, how do you see the next steps? I mean, obviously, everyone is going through a grieving process and a healing process at their own pace, right? But once, you know, we quote unquote start getting back to normal, right, as normal as we can, how do you see like the next steps in terms of organizing or healing, and you know, how do you see that?
Well, we've had this discussion a number of times with the members of our organization, and a lot of the next steps that we see are creating sustainable and long-term support services for the intersecting LGBTQ plus communities of color. There are amazing LGBT organizations, and there are amazing Hispanic-led organizations here, but they're not addressing the intersection. And so we want to be able to fill the gap. And the work that they do is amazing, but again, we find that there's such a large population of people, the largest percentage of LGBT individuals in this community, who are not being adequately served in a variety of ways, whether it's because materials are only available in a single language, and so that language disparity creates a barrier. Transportation creates a barrier. Culturally competent staff and culturally competent counseling services and healthcare services create significant barriers. And so what we want to do is to create a sustainable program that will adequately support the members of this marginalized community as best as possible. Establish those permanent healing and safe spaces that uplift the distinct LGBT and cultural identities of the members of this community. And then creating a network resource of outside agencies and partners that are culturally competent in both LGBTQ plus identity and intersecting Latinx identity, so that whatever services we're unable to provide long-term or sustainably in a single location, we have individuals in the community that we've formed strong partnerships with that we can make referrals to. We're hoping to create education workshops for the community at large to address a vast array of subjects, including intersection, including religion and understanding LGBT narratives, partnering with existing agencies to train them on cultural competency in a way that they may not have been exposed to previously. We have individuals who have such an extensive background in that kind of community education, and so we're going to utilize those skills and bring in individuals who are content experts from the outside to aid in that development process long term.
Awesome. So I think we're losing folks here. We're having some technical difficulties, but I did want to ask if folks want to get involved with QLatinx and, you know, are seeking to find, you know, camaraderie and partnership with other folks in their community that traditionally have not had a place to go, how can they get in contact with you and your organization? How can they get involved?
Well, we are still a baby organization. We only formed about 3 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, really. And so at the moment, the only way to contact the organization at large is to locate us on Facebook. We're at QLatinx, and attend our weekly meetings. As I mentioned earlier, Somos Orlando has been so generous in providing us with the space to convene weekly so that we can organize our members, so that we can build community. And so anyone who's interested in getting involved with our work or learning more about how we can best partner with your existing organization to support the intersecting LGBTQ and Latinx individuals in the community. Just contact us directly. You can contact me directly as one of the lead organizers of this work. I'm happy to speak to any individuals who maybe need some additional information or who want to refer other individuals but don't know how to go about that process, because it is a very sensitive process. And so we definitely want to aid as many individuals in the community as possible for our work.
Great. Is there anything else that you want to add and share? Whatever any final thoughts that you may have, or anything that we missed that you want to make sure that we get into the conversation?
Just knowing that we're here for the long term. We're here to support the intersecting communities of color that are also LGBTQ+. Because, as I said, we have amazing institutions now that support identities of one or the other, but we want to be able to kind of bridge that gap and provide that intersection understanding and support those marginalized LGBTQ+ communities of color in any facet.
Well, Christopher, on behalf of everyone on the call, I want to say thank you and for being patient and persistent and making sure that we included your voice. We really wanted to make sure that QLatinx was represented on this call. So thank you for being patient and bearing with us. I'm so glad that we were able to hear from you. And it was good seeing you this weekend, and I hope to see you soon.
Absolutely.
Oh, I think David has a question. Sorry, it's freezing on my end. David, go ahead with your question. If you can type it out, because I think you froze. Bear with me, Christopher. Don't hang up yet.
Sure thing.
Sit tight. He says he's typing. What do you mean by stories and not being adequately told? Okay, so when you say that, sometimes when these situations happen that they don't adequately tell the story of those who have been affected, can you elaborate a little bit on that and what you mean by that and what we can do differently in the future to make sure that that doesn't happen?
I think that it's important that members who were affected by this tragedy, the community at large, are centered in conversation, are given seat at tables in which decisions are being made on behalf of this community. Largely because, as I said before, the LGBTQ plus communities of color make up the largest percentage of the LGBT individuals in the community. And it's a struggle for us to have adequate representation. It's a struggle for us to be included at decision-making tables, and for our narratives to be told in a way that is in a way that shines a light on the realities of the struggles that we as Latinx LGBTQ plus people face on a daily basis. And so we just want to ensure that their narratives are adequately told and that they are centered in conversations that have taken place and that will continue to take place, especially in conversations where decisions are being made in the long term that are going to significantly affect our community.
And how do we go about doing that? Is in your eyes, how do we make that better? How do we improve? Who are the partners that need to be involved? What does that look like moving forward in terms of how we can improve access and having a seat at the table?
Well, one of the things, and I'm going to be frank about this, one of the things that we've seen is that the Latinx community here, the LGBTQ+, has never truly been unified in the past. And so our work is grounded in unifying out of not only this tragedy, but also by just individuals who make up this community who go to those nightclubs, who have friends who are Latinx, who have never traditionally been in decision-making positions of power. And these are people who are part of the community, who have lived the daily struggle of and who have overcome adversity, who really make up the fabric of our community. And so it's very important that those individuals are the ones that are making decisions on behalf of this community. Those are the individuals whose voices are heard, because they're the ones who have to exist in this reality every single day. And so reaching out to QLatinx or reaching out to just anyone who is a part of the community itself, who really does get involved with the community, who exists in the intersecting LGBTQ plus Latinx community. That's the best way to go about it.
Great. So unless there's some other questions here, it doesn't look like we have folks on. We have a lot of technical difficulties going on, so I apologize. I'm doing the best I can here as moderator in the interim.
It really is awful.
Oh, there's David. So, you know, obviously when we were in the first initial days in response, people are running around in, quite frankly, chaos, right, of trying to help and how do we help, and everyone with the best of intentions wanting to get involved. And sometimes it seemed that that was overwhelming and it was a bit chaotic. Now that things have, you know, the dust has settled a bit, how do you think that people can help more, whether it's directly with QLatinx or if they're an ally in the community? How do you think that people can get engaged and help towards this bigger narrative, this bigger conversation of, you know, moving our marginalized communities more to the forefront and center of these conversations?
Part of that is giving them a space to speak their experience, and also respecting that not everyone is ready to do so. And so we also have to honor individuals who are still healing. We have to honor the fact that they may not be ready to be engaged. And so it's treading very carefully in that whole process, because there are individuals who are ready to go and want to take action, and then there are individuals who are still waking up every single day in terror, who are still going home every single day in tears. And so it's just being very careful, making sure that the individuals that make up this community, that are here every day, that have Latinx friends, that go to those clubs, that, you know, live this experience, are the ones that are speaking on behalf of the community, because they are going to be the most impacted. They are the ones that have been most impacted. Ensuring that they are the ones that are making decisions on behalf of this community, on behalf of memorials, and on behalf of vigils, and on behalf of where dollars are spent outside of the money that needs to go to the families of the victims and first responders, or at least that they have a say-so. Because again, they're the ones that were most impacted. They're the ones that know this community better than anyone else, because they've lived their lives in this community, whether it's been for 5 years or 15 years or 25, 30 years. They are a part of this community, and so they know it better than anyone else. So I think that those are ways in which we can best support them now. Those are ways in which we can ensure that they are, to ensure that our allies who may not be Latinx or who may not be LGBTQ+, are best supporting this intersecting group.
Great. If you wouldn't mind just staying on the line for a little bit longer with us. So, you know, David's posed the question about resources that are available and the funds, and, you know, there's different funds, and that can be a little confusing. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about that for a minute. So obviously in the aftermath of what happened and in the flurry of folks wanting to help. There were different funds that were set up in support, and the main ones being the Equality Florida Fund and the One Orlando City Fund. I'm going to see if I can pop my camera back on here. Can y'all see me? Whoop. Can you guys see me or no?
No.
No? Okay. Well, all right, well, never mind then. But at least you can hear me. Well, that's good. So as we know that in the initial days, the main funds that emerged were Equality Florida's and the City of Orlando's, which finally came together to create one fund, which I believe the pot is around $20 million right now, that is all going directly to survivors and victims of the tragedy. Now that is going through a process that is attempting to be very transparent. There are community town halls that have been set up and scheduled that are open to the public, where people can come and share their concerns, insights. I can imagine there will be plenty of frustrations as well in terms of how this money is dispersed. I think now is when I think things may start to get ugly, because once there's money involved and these allocations, they sometimes can turn into very bitter and ugly fights. So my personal hope is that we all work through this with as much understanding and patience as we can, while still acting quickly and efficiently, because there are people who need these funds quickly. They need them soon. We're going 6 weeks, I believe, since this all happened, so we need to make sure that that's moving quickly. I believe that the target date for funds to be dispersed is October 1st, so the first town hall will be held on August 4th. Forgive me for not having those exact details in front of me right now, but I know that they are open to the public. So that's Orlando, or the One Orlando Fund. Now for Somos Orlando, we also created a fund for the long-term mental health and other services, bicultural, culturally competent, services for the long term here in Orlando for the survivors and families affected. We do have a team that's one of our partners from Hispanic Family Counseling, who have also gone through LGBTQ competency trainings, and we're working closely with QLatinx to make sure that we're doing it right. Like we know that we may make some mistakes, and by we I mean us as Somos Orlando, in the sense that we're very aware of where our privilege ends and how far our voices go in this conversation. But that's why we've been extremely intentional about partnering and elevating the specific marginalized intersection of the LGBTQ Latinx community. So on our end, that's what we're focused on. We know there's going to be long-term needs that extend well beyond a one-time lump sum. So making sure that that support structure is in place for the community. We were very honored and blessed to receive basically the endorsement of Jennifer Lopez and Lin-Manuel Miranda, who have dedicated the proceeds of their current song, Love Make the World Go Round, to Proyecto Somos Orlando. So we're thrilled to have their support. It's available on iTunes now. Please, if you haven't downloaded it, do so. So it's really, for being a tribute song, it's very upbeat. It really, I feel like, represents the community in the sense that it's powerful and it's passionate and it's exciting and it's, full of energy. And this is who our people are, and this is who the LGBT Latinx community are. We really are the colors of the rainbows shining bright through every storm. And I feel like this song really provides hope and energy. And it's fun and it's catchy and it's a great song. So if you haven't downloaded Love Make the World Go Round on iTunes, please, please, please do so. And last but not least is the Pulse Fund, or Pulse of Orlando Fund, which I'm honestly not fully familiar with. So Christopher, I don't know if you know details on that fund, or David, if you do, that could chime in on that. But I know that the Central Florida Foundation is also working on a fund. I believe it's the Better Together Fund, which is also looking to support some of the local nonprofit structure in the area. A lot of groups have met with them in the last couple of weeks, and so we're waiting on some follow-up conversations on what's going to happen there. So there are a lot of funds, there are a lot of things happening. Obviously, from my perspective, we would love to see support to our fund, because we do believe that there are going to be some long-term needs within the community that extend beyond a one-time lump sum payment to these survivors. Their families are also affected. We also want to make sure that we're supporting programs on gender identity and homophobia, which still run rampant in our community. So, those spaces also need to be created for these families of, these survivors who themselves are not gay. Like, maybe there's a mom who just found out through this process that her son is gay and was injured, and now she's dealing with, that in her family, and knowing and understanding those cultural nuances within our culture and trying to break through them, which is something I talked about earlier, I think is really critical, because the stronger we become as a Latino community, relevant of where those intersections are, I think it helps fortify and lift those intersections, especially when we're being intentional about providing this type of information and education and partnerships to make sure that that mom and dad that finds out that their child is gay knows how to react in the appropriate way to provide support, so that that child does not feel abandoned, neglected, unloved, unsupported. We need to be stronger in our community on this issue. We need to work in our churches to break through these barriers. We need to work within our families having these conversations, and in whatever way that we can do that and break down those walls, so that people like the 49 who were there that night, over the 300 who were there that night, many of them who left Puerto Rico and other Latin American countries because of who they were and because of the pain that they felt by their communities where they were, and came here to seek a safe space, that we truly are creating that, not just here in Orlando, but across Latin America and across the Hispanic community, regardless of where we are.
Yeah. My audio is working now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Christopher, are you still on?
Yes.
Yeah, are you still there, Christopher? I really appreciate you all hanging in there, because I could hear you, but I just couldn't participate or chime in or anything. Sorry, but did you all have anything else that you'd like to share or comment on before we start to wrap things up?
I just want to say really quickly that in everything that's happened, we recognize that the community at large is still reeling in the aftermath. There's still so much that we feel and that we experience, and so many of us don't know how to go about processing those feelings. And so, I ask that the allies in our community, our straight allies, our queer and trans allies, understand that we're still overwhelmed with emotion. And so, to give us time, to give us space, and to be understanding, because sometimes we just need that. Sometimes we're fine to go out to lunch and to go dancing, and then other times we're essentially kind of debilitated because of how we're feeling and how we're still experiencing. And so if there's a takeaway from that, it's just to just understand that your friends will be back in the way that they used to be with time, and organizations that are in the community that are doing fantastic work and supporting
Thank you, Christopher, and I just want to say, thank you for the invite. I'm humbled that you would ask us to be here. I'm grateful, of all the new friends that I've made through this process. Um, and I just want to say that I, as Cristina Hernandez, am here to serve my community in whatever way that I can, and to support anyone who needs my help. I've always kind of operated on the belief of I would want someone to do it for me, and that's how I try to live my life. So, I'm just really honored to have met people like you, David, through this process who I know, we came together on a randomly on a Facebook chat at 8 in the morning on the following Sunday. I'm honored to meet Christopher and his group and the amazing work that they're doing, and just trying to be as supportive in whatever way that we can. So thank you. My love goes out to all of you, and I hope to be able to get together soon and have some laughs and do some dancing and celebrate, the progress that we're making and that we will continue to make together.
And I did have one other. I never stop having questions. Sorry, but so I know that. And do you all recommend any news articles, resources, readings that people can read to maybe become more familiar? I know that HuffPost recently had. I don't know if it's new, but it came on my social media feed explaining what Latinx even means, or is it? Am I pronouncing that correctly? Is it Latinx, Latinx?
You're good.
Okay, so I mean, just understanding what that term means. I know that QLatinx was recently featured in the New Yorker in a story just looking at very kind of pretty in depthly what it's like to be a gay Latino man in Orlando, coping with everything that's happening. And I think that there was an editorial that came out pretty quickly after the shooting that was like in praise of Latin Night at the Queer Club. I've come across some interesting articles myself. I'm just wondering, do you all recommend any particular readings or resources for people to better educate themselves on some of the, because I've heard the term marginalized being used, like what are the issues that people need to understand about this community that where this marginalization is happening, and people understand that's a thing, you know.
Christopher, you want to take that one?
I hope that I was just okay.
I mean, after everything that happened, immediately after, with all of the news that was coming out, there's so many articles that were being written from the perspective of LGBTQ people, or the perspective of Latino people, and I think it's important that those voices are heard. And so there are a few really powerful articles that give you an in-depth understanding of what it's like to be a part of the intersection. And as you mentioned, David, the recent editorial that was posted in the New Yorker really gives an in-depth analysis and the fears and the experiences of people in the community and how they're still reeling. And there are really powerful articles out there that talk about the importance of these queer spaces, these queer and trans spaces like nightclubs, and why they have been sanctuary places of refuge. Several days after this tragedy, a couple of weeks actually after this tragedy, I penned an op-ed for Huffington Post as well that kind of just speaks to my experiences as a person who lives in the intersection. And there are so many more powerful articles out there that really speak to that, and just understanding, what people in this community here in Orlando are directly feeling and experiencing, and the struggles and adversities that the people like us have to live with on a daily basis. Because it's so much more than just living in our queerness or living in our trans identities. also having to add on the layer of being a part of a minority community, a racial or ethnic minority community. When you look at queer and transness in this country, it's never really looked at from that purview. It's always looked at from another lens. And so I think it's so important that for individuals who want to learn more about why this tragedy has been so impactful for the pocketed communities of color, I think that looking into articles like that will really give you a better understanding of why we live in this kind of era and why we're still so deeply affected by all of this.
Well, thank you, Christopher. I'm going to go ahead and make the executive decision to end the chat because David just popped off. So thank you again for being patient, and thank you to Rethinking the City for hosting us today. Thank you to David, Frederick, and you, Christopher. Thanks again for everything. Let's continue to move forward and work together. And thank you for all that you're doing, and we will talk soon.
Thank you, Christine.
All right. I love you. Talk to you soon. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Okay, am I back in here now? Sorry, I got cut off. But thank you, everyone, for participating tonight. And I really appreciate Christina, Christopher, and Frederick attempting to navigate the technical difficulties, but to talk about what local leaders and activists in the community are doing to better support the intersection and visibility of LGBTQ plus Latinx individuals who have been directly impacted by the Pulse shooting or are also just part of the community and have been impacted, whether they were at the club that night or not. And we'll be back next month for another installment of Rethinking the City. Thank you. Bye.